What's up, everyone? It's Nick with TechRaptor, and I'm here at the Arena of Valor World Cup. I'm here with Ramon, who is the director of esports for Tencent, and we're just going to be kind of just talking esports for a minute. Obviously, this is something that, for the majority of people, is kind of a new thing. Esports have been around forever, but it becoming more of this like mainstream sort of thing. Like right now, we're at the Chinese Theater for an event. Which 10 years ago, if I told someone about that, they would have thought like that's crazy, like video games and sports. So my first question is, does Tencent have a like path to pro for Arena of Valor, or like how do you become, how do you get here?
So the game is still fairly young in the US. We only launched December of last year. This is the global finals of the World Cup. We completed the first season for North America last month. The season kicked off in April, and to your question about how does somebody move into that, we made it very grassroots focused so that we ran a couple of different qualifiers that allowed pretty much anybody who could find 4 friends to form a team to compete. And actually during the season we had weekly relegations for the bottom 2 teams that allowed new teams to push in an effort to really keep that a little bit open, because the game was so new, to help us identify who the strong players were and to let those players rise to the top. So it's been an interesting experience to watch how that has unfolded and really base it around what the community has been looking for and to get the community engaged in it. And we're about a week or 2 away from talking about and announcing Season 2, and we want to continue to really make that very accessible for everybody.
Now, when you say grassroots, what's Tencent's like focus with like more grassroots and smaller esports leagues and players?
So we want to look at the entire ecosystem. So what you're seeing here today is really the top of the pyramid, where you have the professional teams compete. And a lot of the Asian teams that we have out here at home, they play in professional leagues that are very similar to what you're used to from your PC or console leagues out there, right? But below that, the things that we're also very interested in is building out an infrastructure that services the people that are maybe better placed in Tier 2 or Tier 3. What does Little League look like? Is there a college aspect to it? Should high school be something that plays into it? So those are kind of the fields that we're looking at right now and trying to connect the dots a little bit, where it all comes together and ultimately ladders up and allows people to really move in at the bottom of that and find their path towards the pro level.
Do you see more esports college teams coming out, or is this still more of an individual kind of?
So esports in the college space has been a really exciting growth story over the last couple of years. We've seen multiple universities and colleges offering scholarships as they're springing up esports programs on their campus. We've seen the first conferences actually running esports tournaments for the membership schools. So there's tremendous momentum in the college space, and if you look at it, the varsity sports structure is actually a great blueprint for how esports works. Especially if you think of the accessibility for esports, it's not just you participating necessarily as an athlete to compete at the top level, but also there's ways where clubs and colleges offer a way for you to interact with the game and to participate in maybe a slightly less serious fashion. Think of something like a Friday night beer league, right, where just students come together and play the games in a much more relaxed and fun way. So it's a great space for students to experience the game in multiple different ways, competitive to fun.
Do you see esports having more of a foothold in the mobile gaming space or the traditional PC and console space in the near future?
So if you look at this globally, in China, in Thailand, in Vietnam, mobile esports has already replaced the traditional esports from PC or console to a large degree. Arena of Valor is one of the biggest titles, in some countries the biggest title that's being played. It fills huge stadiums for its big events. It gets massive online viewership. So from that perspective, I would argue that it has already drawn level or even surpassed your traditional esports. I think in the US and in Europe, maybe that's going to be a slower transition. I think a lot of the existing audience is still firmly rooted, having their PC or console at home, and that's what they're used to seeing as their go-to esports platform. But we're seeing a lot of people making that discovery right now, and it hasn't been until fairly recently that the technology for phones has really gotten powerful enough to offer these kind of games and have that core experience that you have been used to and that maybe you were looking for from a PC to now discover on mobile.
All right. How does Tencent plan to bring esports to a more mainstream audience? Recently Disney acquired rights for the Overwatch League, and you're seeing a bit more like in the cultural zeitgeist, like esports, like everything's becoming an esport. What's Tencent's plans to make it the next big sport for someone that's not necessarily like a hardcore gamer to follow or be interested in?
So there's a couple of different elements that come into play there. I would say first and foremost, we would like to let the game do the heavy lifting and speak for itself. And I feel like that is where a game like Arena of Valor actually helps tremendously with its accessibility. It really eases people into the MOBA genre. It's a lot more forgiving to a new player discovering what a MOBA game is when it comes to understanding what the meta should be like, how to play your champion, where to be on the map. So it kind of onboards players in a great way, but then towards the higher levels, you get that same competitive experience that you've been used to. So we feel like that's probably our most successful path towards really getting a larger audience, and that's helped us tremendously in the countries where it already has gotten big. But we're also looking at the broadcast side of things. We did broadcast the first season of the game on a lot of different platforms. We're still trying to see where really that mobile audience likes to consume its content and what the right format of that content should look like. For season 2, we'll see if we're going to make some adjustments and maybe be able to improve on how we can deliver that content.
Great. And then final question, just to kind of wrap this up a little bit. As far as broadcasting goes, because it's such a new thing for esports, do you see like mobile games like Arena Valor and stuff, do you see that having a future on like television broadcasting, or is kind of internet broadcasting the path forward for esports in general?
So in many regards, I would say that this is still, even for general esports, despite its heavy growth, the early days of us figuring out what the broadcasting format really needs to be like. I would even go so far as to say that broadcasting so far has really been catering towards a very purist audience that's very much focused on the competition element of it. But if you think of traditional sports, there is a lot of storytelling that happens around sports that focuses on the teams, on what happens inside the teams, on the players inside those teams. And I feel like maybe that's an opportunity for linear TV to do a lot of that shoulder content that could really play into it. So in short, I feel like different platforms can fulfill different roles. I think we're just starting to see what that might look like for esports.
Well, I think it's off to a great start. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. And once again, I'm Nick, and stay tuned for more.